Well, hey there, and welcome to the Home Hangout. It's Friday. Hope you're doing well. Hope your week has been good. We have got an action packed show for you today, so I hope you're buckled in with a drink. And we've got a lot to cover. We have the man himself, George, that I'll bring on in just a sec. But before we do that, I just want to get the elephant in the room out of the way. It's been quite a week for the game dev community with the Unity announcement. We do have an official announcement from Homa coming out in the next hour or so, which I will share over on the Discord and in our LinkedIn group, both of which are linked below in the description. But yeah, so official word from us is coming out in a while. You may have already seen some of the other publishers mentioning us as part of the collective against the decision. But let's not shy away from that. So that's what's happening on that front. And I'm just going to bring George in because we've got so much to cover today. I'm worried on the time. So what is up, George? How you doing, sir?
Hello, I'm doing very good. Thanks for having me again. Hi,
You're
everybody.
very welcome. Um, you've just been on holiday. We were just talking. That's why we're a bit late today. But George, we have got some puzzles to go through today.
Exactly.
And it's one of those ones where it's a huge, vast subject. And we're going to sort of scratch the surface a little bit today. Otherwise, we'd be in for like a 7-week stream at this point. But to kick things off, I'm just going to give some context to it, and then I'm going to get George back on, and he's going to give you some ideation tips and all of that good stuff. So, without further delay,
Yep.
you know George already. He's our ideation expert here. I'm just going to run past it, George, because I know we've got a lot to cover. Before I do that, of course, I want to welcome everybody in the chat. Good to see you here. Eunice, Jilly, Chris, Frantic, Marina. What is up? Bayram Sultan. Hope it's all going well for you guys. Good to see you here. Thanks for joining with me. If you have a spare moment, we have got a survey running at the moment, and it's all about AI. So even if it takes like 1 minute, it's fully anonymous. And even if you're not using AI, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Literally, it's like a multiple guest sort of thing. 1 minute, we'd really appreciate you doing that for us. So yeah, there's my ask for today. And of course, if you want to see more content from us, hit the like and subscribe button, all of that good stuff. But let us get into things today. And we are talking, as I mentioned, we're talking puzzles, which is pretty cool. So if you've got questions, do get them in. I can see your questions, and we will get to them in the middle and at the end. So let's dive straight in today. Let me just move this out of the way because that has popped up unexpectedly. Okay, so puzzles, reimagining the genres, carrying on from our FPS one that we did a few weeks back now. Go and check that one out if you haven't done so already. But let's talk about puzzles today, and I'm going to start off with a really simple thing and defining what the puzzle is. And I think it's kind of important, really. And I really like to set these sort of, I want to set these things off so we can understand and not stray too far from our main objective when we're looking at a particular genre or trying to make a game, because it's always really important to stay focused and don't stray too far away. So, the definition, dictionary noun, of course, is a game, toy, or problem designed to test. I hate this word. Ingenious. I can't say it. It's so embarrassing. Ingenuity or knowledge. And I've highlighted those two. A, because I can't say them, and B, because I think they're important as part of the definition on this one, because it's the quality of being clever, original, and inventive, which I think are keywords. And for knowledge, it's letting the player acquire the skills by experience. Now, I know that's really basic. I'm really not trying to try and teach you how to English, because I find that difficult myself. But I think it's worth remembering this, that just to call yourself back when you're making games on whatever you're trying to do, is just, are you staying true to the definition of what people will imagine them to be? All right, very quickly, that's out of the way. Right, so global puzzle game downloads, this is both stores, for 2019 to 2022. Stats aren't available, obviously, for the full year yet on 23, but they were downloaded 4.5 billion times, and that's gone back to pre-pandemic levels. So you can see in 2019, that's a sort of benchmark of where it was going. Obviously, with the bug that came out and all the lockdowns, that saw a spike in all sorts of stats. So it's kind of that weird moment in history where we have to sort of give some concessions this way or that way. But that is a staggering amount of downloads. So certainly a popular genre. I'm sure you've all played a puzzle yourself at one point or another. So let's dive into this a little bit more. So who is playing the puzzles? Generally female over the age of 35. And they play them to reduce stress, to pass the time, and get that feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction as they do it. So we talk a lot about the player audience of late, super important. So this is why we can see a lot of the themes of the big hit games tend to skew more female. Of course, there's males that play them, but you can see there that the majority are female players, and they like to do them in between other things. So they're not identifying as gamers as such. They're not hardcore gamers. These are the sort of little snackable type games, even though they're casual based. They jump in and they want to get that sort of in between everything else. They get their 3 minutes of relaxation and switch off with relatively short sessions. A lot of the time, it's more to do with can they accomplish something within that short session. They may play longer, of course, but can they get can they get to the next level within 3 minutes if they don't want to be sitting down and have to commit a 20-minute block to a particular game to move forward. And they also like to see the mechanics of the game move forward throughout, so as they progress, they can feel like they're getting further along and it's changing up. A lot of the puzzles have repetitive mechanics, and therefore introducing new additional mechanics throughout, tweaks and stuff like that. That's what we want to be heading for. And of course, we've seen the explosion and mainstream adoption of live ops and battle passes, which really does tackle that very nicely indeed. So that's something you can consider. Alrighty, so key elements in your game design for puzzles: rules and limitations, intuitive controls, and a clear completion goal. So your rules and limitations they ultimately define how your puzzles are created, and they're the catalyst for creating the pinch points or the catches or the revelations in your game where someone goes, and then that's what we're trying to achieve with puzzles. And that's typically what we really want to be heading for, to create those moments. So the limitations is an important one. It really doesn't have to be overcomplicated, but that little infusion of making you feel clever or you just got it is super powerful in puzzles. And you can think about this if you know the game chess, which I'm sure many of you do. Certain pieces in the chessboard are limited by certain movements. So you get a bishop that can go all the way to the other end of the board, but it can only move diagonally. The rook, or the horse as we call it over in the UK, can go like up 3 and over 1. So it can do that, which is great, but it's limited by that. So it's those sort of things that you want to think about, the rules and the limitations of the puzzles. The control system needs to be really, really tight on a puzzle, particularly. If you're trying to do something relatively fiddly, or kind of if you're swerving stuff about, if you're swapping, if you're sliding or swiping, it needs to be so on point, especially in puzzles, because if it's janky or it doesn't quite work properly, people are just going to get really frustrated with it. So ensure that your controls are super tight as always. It should go without saying for most games, but overall, really important on your puzzles. And of course, your goals on how to complete the puzzle should be massively clear. So you should make sure that the player knows what to do as soon as they enter the puzzle. It needs to be really clear. Their focus they shouldn't be figuring out what to do, just how to do it. So that's the key elements in puzzle design. Of course, the slides, as always, will be available inside the Academy on Monday. So if you haven't already joined the Academy, come and join us over there. Again, link in the description. And you can download all the slides for this presentation and every other one as well. So there's the 3 key elements in your puzzle design, things to look back on and make sure again that you're keeping that tight. So let's have a look at some of the best games that are out in the market right now as of this week. So top 100 overall free games, there are 28 puzzles. So nearly a third of the entire US iOS top 3 overall games are puzzles. So a third of the top 100, which is pretty crazy, to be honest. And this is as of Monday this week when I pulled this data. So I think that's kind of telling of the popularity of puzzles. A lot of these have been around a long time, but it just goes to show the popularity of the genre and lots of things to get inspiration from. So, out of those 28, 12 are in the top 100 overall grossing chart, which are highlighted in pink here. So you can see the most popular ones here are Happy Match Cafe, which is a relatively new one that's absolutely crushing it, as is Chrome Valley Customs, a match 3 based around auto from the guys at Space Ape, aka Supercell Company, and some really familiar ones there that you'll know. Angry Birds 2 is still kicking in there, which is kind of amazing. All right, so we can see how popular these are. You can see they're very lucrative as well. And I thought it would be just fun to see exactly what type of puzzle are all these games, what mechanics do they use. So you can see there, it'll come more clear on the next slide, but we got certain ones that are definitely proving more popular than others. So let's take a look at this. So the top grossing puzzles are using this type of mechanic. So the matching is probably no surprise to most. Now matching could be a typical match 3. You can also have match and collect, where you get a series of what would be dots and you draw lines and stuff like that. Word games, which includes word search, crosswords, and really that's about it, I think, for word. Bubble shooter, classic bubble shooters, very smart. We released a few of those back in the day. Sorting and tap and blast. So tap and blast will be like Toon Blast and things like that, where you tap on all the same colours that you go around. I'll show you. I've got some examples here. So here is the matching. So we can see triple match here. I didn't include a typical match 3 because I'm sure we're all well aware of those ones. But this is an innovation on the match mechanic, where you've got a whole bunch of food items that we can see on this screen, and you're matching them that way. But it's not a swap; it's a collect mechanic, which is pretty interesting as well. Wordscapes is next, which is essentially a crossword that you're pre-filling there, and yeah, so an innovation on an old cross. It's like a reverse crossword, in fact, where you're creating the the words down the bottom to fill the crossword that way. Bubble Shooter, Bubble Pop there by Bit Mango. Classic bubble shooter game. Something to consider though. Sorting. Water Sort Puzzle has just been a knockout success. There's a vast amount of, I want to say clones, but I don't mean they're versions of this type of game. But really fun, based more in logic. This one, and there's a tap and blast at the end there with Toon Blast, where you're getting the actual colours there. Really juicy. It's got a real match 3 type vibe about it. Super juicy, and that is more of the tap and blast. So there's the setup, really. Put together a quick taxonomy here of the mechanics, the controls, and the subgenres. Again, this is so vast, it was relatively overwhelming, if I'm perfectly honest with you. Each one of these could go many, many different ways. It is not an exhaustive list by any shape of imagination, but these are the most popular ones. And I think this one, if you're thinking about a puzzle, I think you should grab this slide on Monday or screenshot this. Because I think it opens up a ton of possibilities of what to consider. And I would like you to probably try and merge some of these together as well. So take existing popular sort of folding mechanic, and can you do a folding match 3? I don't know. But this is the kind of process that we're talking about on the ideation show, to try and twist your brain a little bit, try and get you thinking slightly different. And I find having these things to look at is a lot easier sometimes when you're trying to merge different systems and mechanics. So the controls, typical, or your input systems here, are not pretty much normal mobile control systems. Tap and hold, sort of finger swiping or cutting. Classic cut the rope is like a swipe. So all sorts of different control systems you can use. You just need to be really smart to make sure it marries up with the mechanic that you choose. So you wouldn't want a swipe mechanic for a match 3, I wouldn't think, because it would feel weird. Or maybe you do, I'm not sure. And the last bit of the categories there, you've got physics-based puzzles, you've got non-physics, then you've got 1v1s, battles, or even sort of conquering multiplayer battles that you can think of. So can you take a predominantly single-player game and put some faking AI into it to make it feel like a versus game? There's all sorts of avenues to go down on this one. So hopefully that's some food for thought. So I'm going to pass it back over to George. I'm going to bring George back on here actually while I find the comments. I
Hello.
couldn't see any of the comments there. Don't know if we got anything. Quick question from Chris here. To see if any of you have heard about Unity might start charging when apps are downloaded. Oh, Chris, okay. Right. So that's what. If you join our LinkedIn group, Chris, you'll find all the information you'll need about that. I put a post out, pretty much the first one to post about it, I think. So come and join us over on the LinkedIn group, and you'll get the information there. Tile Busters is a great game. Yes, it is. That's done really well for them. It's a relatively new one. Love to know if anybody is thinking about making a puzzle at the moment, or made puzzle games in the past. If so, get your questions in. Did George bring us any gifts back from his trip?
I brought myself.
There we go. The
Yeah.
greatest gift of all, I'm sure you would all agree. So yeah, what is up, Ray? Good to see you in the chat, Chris. Mr. Cortex, nice to see you. Carlard, hi, how you doing? Frantic, what is up? So I'm going to pass over to George now, and he's going to talk a little bit about sequential puzzles. So George,
Yeah.
over to.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So sequential puzzles are, as Kevin already showed it, is subgenre out of a logic puzzle that exists within the multitude of genres that exist in puzzles. I'm touching in this one because it's the most hyper casual one, I'd say, and the one that seems to have the most success, ongoing success, I'd say, because there's so many titles that just follow this type of framework. So I'm trying to show here and deconstruct a little bit how they play out and what parameters you can use when creating those type of puzzles. Moving on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So sequential puzzles were made popular by Popcorn. If you know them, you probably know them if you're into hyper casual. So tap away, pull the pin, parking jam, all of those. These are puzzles that are pretty simple because they depend on the marketability and the theme. So that's something that you need to have in consideration before even thinking about the mechanics of the game, because that's where you're gonna drive most of your CPI is through the theme, because the mechanics are gonna be probably the same in most of your games. And the challenge of this is keeping the logic fresh. So you got to think to yourself, am I just going to remove things and expose other things beneath, or am I going to give it a new twist with gravity or with another sort of mechanic or gimmick that will make your game a little bit more fresher and interesting? Usually the position, it's top down or facing directly, so either you see the action from above, and you interact with it through a tap or slide mechanic. Usually that's the control. Most of the case I find it that tapping is almost 100% used nowadays, but we do see some sliding motions, and also the dragging motion also used, but mostly slides. The art style tend to be cartoonish and minimal to keep the contrast very easy to see, and the creative very explicit in terms of what is happening and what's the actions that you need to do. And the assets, these simple puzzles are basically used also with simple assets, as I'm going to show you next. And they progress in sequence of moves that lead to the final result, which needs to be very clear, as Kevin showed before. Usually there's a constraint that prevents you from doing a certain action. Usually there's one, but it can have more than one, but usually one is more than enough for most of these puzzles I'm going to show you. And there are mostly no consumables, where there's, I think, one big game that uses consumables, where it's really only one. And this might be something that you can introduce into your new game. So consumables that facilitate the way or ease you in to the mechanics of the game. Next one, please. So these are the top grossing games from that subgenre, the sequential puzzles. First one, it's one of the most recent ones by Popcorn, Tangle Snakes. Then you have the very popular Parking Jam 3D, which I think everybody knows. Tap away, pull the pin, and our very own open the box. So if you look at all of the images here, you can see everything in common that they have. So they have a tap motion that removes uh, removes one piece of the puzzle to then tap again and make another piece move, or have another action right after that removal of an obstacle. So that's going to be the main thing you need to have in mind. So how can I, for example, uh, pick all of these mechanics that I see in every single game, and how can I expose it in a way that it's really going to bring something new to the theme that I chose beforehand? And for example, how can I combine some of these and make a new game out of this? So for example, on Open the Box, at the very end here, you can see you have the slide, the 3D vision that you can rotate the object from tap away. And then you have the overlapping of tangle snakes, overlapping, not the overlapping, but the obstacle of things hitting each other and not being able to move, from tap away, also from parking jam when the cars hit each other. In this case, we chose the overlapping mechanic, which was something that really fitted the theme of the unboxing. And it goes back again to the theme, unboxing something that's really relatable and very simple to understand what it is. And I think it's a major part on the selection of the theme. You need to choose something that's very relatable, as everybody knows it when it sees it. And it's all reflected on all of these examples. So snakes, you have cars, you have blocks, color balls. So it's something, even if it's abstract, it's really easy to understand what it is. Next slide, please. Starting with tangle snakes, as it was the first example, there are 4 parameters that I think we always need to take in consideration. First one will be the core mechanics. These ones being the tap to remove the snake, the removal of the snakes that are overlapping each other or in front of others, and avoiding the traps that the level puts in front of you. All of this combined, it really does it really creates a logic that you need to do in several steps, and that's why we call them sequential, because they are sequential steps to get to your main objective. Then thinking about the game constraint, you already have some on the core mechanics, actually. So the traps and snakes are overlapping, and the game constraint being that you cannot move if there's a snake on top of you or in front of you. So very, very simple to understand, very visual also. So if you see a snake on top of you, there's kind of a shadow on top of you also. And you can clearly see that if you tap, it's going nowhere. And the main objective, as Kevin said and I said, really clear: get the level, rid of all the snakes, and have a blank canvas. And there's no consumables for this particular game. Passing on the next one, Parking Jam, again by Popcore. So core mechanics here, I think you'll find it that's very similar. You probably don't have one that the other has, but you basically slide instead of tapping here. You slide, and then the car goes back to the closest lane, or to the lane that you drag the car from. And then you remove the obstructing cars, but still the main objective is to clear the whole parking lot, as is in Tangle Snakes. And then the thing here that also you have to take in consideration is that you have to time exit to avoid the crash, which kind of you have to do in Tangle Snakes as well. So if you hit another snake while another one is escaping, it kind of cancels the animation. So that's something, a twist that you have to have in consideration, which is pretty interesting. So those small details are kind of the innovations that you can introduce into your next puzzle that will keep it fresh and a bit different from the others. And here the game constraint is that, of course, cars cannot move if there's another one in front, but it does not have the overlapping. So in Tangle Snake, since it's a more recent title, they added the overlapping, which is pretty smart. If not, it was just parking jam with the snake theme. So it's pretty smart on this one. Again, no consumables, just the logic and the timing and the sequence of removing obstructing cars. Next one, please. Tap away. So this one might be one of the most different of the whole bunch here. So in this one, you do have rotation that you can that you can use to spot where are other cubes, or where are the other steps that I can take to remove the cubes. So this one differentiates itself a lot. So as you can see here, it's a 3D object. It's not static as most of the other ones. The camera actually moves. And the core mechanics are that you tap a block, and once you tap it, it moves the way it's facing, where the arrow is facing. So again, it borrows the same mechanics from the other 2 games. If the arrow is facing another block, it will not move, and the block will be obstructing its way. So it's exactly the same mechanics, But in here, you change the theme, you add a new mechanic, the rotation, and boom, you have a pretty much a new puzzle. The game constraint again, you cannot move if the block's arrows are facing another block. Sounds familiar? Yes, because it's it's the same from the other two. So you cannot move if something is in front of you or on top of you. And this one is the only one, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if does have dynamite to blow up blocks that you can unlock where as long as the time goes, and it really facilitates some levels, but it's really I wouldn't say it's part of the core loop. You can really have fun and play for a long time without these consumables. It's just a matter of progression, I'd say. But it's interesting that they added this consumable in a portfolio of games that really don't use this type of features in the game. And just to wrap it up, objective, clear all blocks from view, as the other ones have also. So clear the whole thing. Next one, please. Pull the pin, and again by Popcorn. So here, the only one that I think uses gravity and uses the tap mechanic on top of to differentiate itself from tap away. So you tap to remove the pin, and then you have the new mechanic, which is the gravity. So it makes the balls meet, and then you have to collect them at the end. So again, the sequence: remove the pin, have the balls meet, and then um, without without making them drop the basket, having them all inside of the basket, the colored ones, you collect all of the colored balls and clear the whole level. It's still very familiar. It just has gravity on top of it. It has still the same sequences as the others, so it just doesn't have the hitting object, let's say the facing object or the overlapping object. Or you could consider that the pins are the objects that are uh, facing the balls, but it's still very familiar, and it's still a logic puzzle of 3 or 4 steps as the others are. So continuing the core mechanics: tap to remove the pin, make the ball meet, and once all the balls have the color, make them drop in the cup. Sounds very simple, really. um, the game constraint is that you cannot move if there's a pin blocking. You could consider this as the obstacle facing, as the other, as the cars, snakes, or blocks. And you cannot catch any gray balls. Also, the second constraint, as you've seen, most of the other ones you actually have constraints. We have a single constraint, rather say, that you can either just not move if there's something overlapping or facing you. Here, you cannot move if there's something facing you, and you cannot also catch gray balls. So, adding a second constraint, but no consumables here, and still maintaining the same main objective. So in every single example that we've been seeing, we have just a tiny bit of changes and innovation that are added. And I think these are the basics here are really something to keep in mind. You can see that in all of the examples, you maintain the basics and you introduce 1 or 2 new mechanics slash constraints that really pop that theme that you chose or make it shine in terms of the gameplay, as it is here, the gravity and the color catching, I'd say. Not exactly sure how to name it. I'd call it the color selection or the color collection. Yeah. Continuing to the next one, and I believe the last example here, Open the Box, our very own from Homa and Memo Studios. So in here, this is also a recent title from us. We can see that it does take the rotation from tap away as a core mechanic. It still uses the tap to unfold. In here, it's unfold instead of movement, so static object that unfolds. I think very inspired from hyper-casual titles like Fully 3D from Good Job Games, and other titles from that same company, but borrows some hyper-casual mechanics that are very interesting, and it does require a little bit of thinking on which pieces do I have to overlap first? Are there any pieces that are hidden behind the rotation in another angle? So really makes you look for the angle that you need to remove first, and makes you think what's the next move that you need to make. But just to list the core mechanics here, so tap to unfold. The, you can unfold if there are no pieces overlapping, as I said before, or if there are no, for example, tear strips like you have on the Amazon packages, which is the main theme of the game. And once everything is unraveled, you have the foam covering the objective, and then you tap to reveal as a reveal at the end. The game constraints, as I said before, also cannot move if there's a part overlapping. Again, very familiar from other titles. And you cannot unfold if there's a sticker on top or a tear strip. These are just two intricacies that are very not very noticeable at first, but once you evolve in the levels, they start appear more and more, just to add a little bit of challenge and as a constriction, which turns the game a bit more challenging and pretty interesting. And the main objectives here are to reveal every object inside of the box, and then as a progression feature, collect all of these objects and decorate the rooms. And this game particularly doesn't have any consumables, and also, on contrary to Tap Away, which had, it wouldn't benefit, I think, as much as the other will do, because this one has a bit more mechanics than just tapping and make it move. It does have the overlapping and stripping. I mean, you could add, for example, a X cutter to that will facilitate at least one move, but it really wouldn't add that much to the game, I'd say. But in theory, you could have consumables in this type of game. And I think these were all the examples. As you can see, most of them didn't add anything that really break the barrier of the puzzles as we know them, but they all share something in common, and they all add their own twists, and particularly, and the most one of the most important things, they all had their different themes and their own personalities, which I think really helped with their CPI most likely, and the marketability overall. Passing on to the next slide and to wrap things up. So again, just conclusion, what are the core elements of a sequential puzzle? It's gameplay progression, which we didn't touch. There are different types of challenges that you can unlock, either time-based, memory-based, difficulty levels from normal to extreme, where you might have, for example, in Tap Away, a block with 1,000 blocks that you need to remove in a time limit, or a map system or a decoration system like in Open the Box, that really allows you to play longer term and to collect items and then put them into your own collection. Its meta features have very simple customization and gameplay elements. Like, for example, you can customize your background, the core toy, the animations, and the hand. You also can collect puzzle pieces from completing the levels, and unlock more premium features. So these are all cosmetics and very light meta features, things that you can unlock with in-game currency. And the level-based challengers increase the difficulty unlocked by these coins, which are the in-game currency that you gain from completing the levels. I think that's the only type of currency that you can even have in these games. I don't think you can even do in-app purchases or buy these type of credits. But it's interesting that you can have this very light monetization, and on this type of game, which a lot this type of game which needs to have so many, how can I put it, so many um, types of ads, like a regular hyper casual game, because in puzzles you have a different kind of dynamic. You don't have this moving target which is as these all kind of actions. You do have a static element which you just turn around and do small actions. And then once you put a lot of ads in this, you would expect to have some type of monetization, for example, for consumable or for other types of progression. But in this case you don't really have that, and it works, which is really interesting, and it's something to keep in mind For example, how can you vary cosmetically your level to make things interesting, the animations, the assets itself that you use. And on the monetization, as I was talking before, there's listed there the things that you can use, just as I said, playable skins, accessories, backgrounds, and barely any fiat purchases, only the VFX, which you can explore with the themes that you choose. So it can vary a lot. It can vary a lot on the monetization loops, but the theme that you choose will also dictate how well you can monetize your game in terms of cosmetics and skins and whatnot. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, last slide, I believe, what to focus on when building your next game from now on. So the sticky core mechanic that you can get inspired from the all of the other games that I've shown. Sequential removal of items to make others move or to make others have some sort of action, win these levels and stages, and clearing, and mostly all of them, clearing the level so you can feel satisfying and rewarding, or exposing something at the end after unwrapping things. The game design considerations you can have in mind are the challenges as a progression feature, harder and harder levels that can be unlocked by daily missions or through just regular progression. The level races, so complete levels before other players, for example, or leaderboards, fake PvP or asynchronous PvP. The gacha style machines with random rewards that allows you to get coins, tickets, ball machines, skins, etc., which is exists in a lot of popcorn games, and the world building maps, which is something that exists in, I think, most of the puzzle genre. For example, creating the house, decorating rooms, unlocking new locations, having new sections of the map unlocked, and all those types of features. And moving on to the next slide, I believe we're over here, right? Yes. Thanks again. I hope it was clear for every single one of you. I'm really open to questions now from me and Kevin, if you have some.
Yeah, thanks for that, George. Appreciate that. There's a load of questions come in. So I think it's important to remember just focusing on the sequential puzzles today. We just chose that because there's some massive games in there. But that's just one little sub genre of a category of a mechanic that you could dive into. And even that we can see how the different variations, even just by theme, the different type of games that you can create from that style. Let's get to some of these questions, George. I've got a couple more things to round off on, but we'll do this now. Um, what do you think about Popcore's minimal style from SM? I feel like they have a cohesive theme in most of their games, but not sure if that's good for CPI and or retention.
I think it's pretty good for CPI. I mean, if you look at Tangled Snakes, even though it's simplistic, it's still colorful. It still draws attention, and of course, you can change your creatives. You can the creatives might not reflect the final gameplay, as I think you can observe in, like, for example, tap away. I think it's a bit different. It does change the type of arrows that you use. So in the creatives, you can think of how can I make this simple experience more attractive. But I think keeping the game itself and the core loop very explicit and very and the art style very clean and very contrasty. It's pretty important to maintain the player and not fatigue it, and also to maintain that fidelity in all of their games. I think it's a good move to keep all their art style, because you know it's a popcorn game, and you know that it's going to be a good puzzle in the end.
Yeah, I think they're relatively unique in the fact that they've got Pull the Pin was such an outlier game.
Mhm.
And they really did build a brand from that
And
game, which is why you see in their backgrounds and their UI, it's almost like for like. They're almost a carbon copy of each other. Just insert new puzzle here. So I think it's really smart. And of course, when you talk about Pull the Pin, that is still, name a casual game that hasn't got a pull the pin mini game in it now, or is certainly advertising Save the king from the dragon, or drop the coal on the fire to warm the
Yeah.
woman up, or
All of the
like.
fake ads you can think of use
Yeah,
that.
so I think in terms of CPI, I think it was in a unique position there, and there's no reason why you can't use your reuse your assets in your UI. I kind of like it. It does build brand, I think, and I think that's really I think that's a really smart thing to do. Jilly says the only bugbear I have with puzzles is that the levels are really short and the amount of ads is bonkers annoying. I reworded that. I shouldn't have done. It's shown is so frustrating. Usually after an ad after every level, so she deletes it. What do you think about the ad frequency in games like that?
Yeah, I think it needs to be, in order to monetize it well, it needs to be that heavy because it doesn't have any monetization features, as I said, like in-app purchases, I'd say. Uh, so it does need to have that ad frequency to survive because the playtime usually is long on puzzles, as we assume, and retention. But since there's no EIP features, how can you monetize that game? So you have to, you can't break it during the gameplay. So during the 30 seconds or a minute that you're doing the level, if you break that experience with an ad, I think it's gonna kill the game. But if you do it after every level, I think it's more people are more tolerable. I think when once you put it at the end of the level, if you do it mid game, in some upper casuals you have mid game, and that is even more annoying, I would consider.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
mean, I think overall, when you look at the stuff releases from the big match threes, they're not. There's no interstitials in those games, so they are puzzles like your match. Why do I always Royal Match? There's no interstitials on that. I don't even think they got rewarded videos in that, but they monetize um, through in-app purchase and buying time. Essentially, I would imagine is their biggest one, or buying moves. So I do get your point, but George is right. With these sort of more simpler puzzles like this, they have to show that many ads to. I mean, ultimately, they want you to spend the 1.99 to remove them. So,
Yeah.
but we take your point, Jill. Like ads. It's a necessary evil, I think. Um, Chris says, I appreciate the actual puzzle element is the most important aspect of a puzzle game, but does the look have to be full on hyper casual, or can we get away with a less polished look for a puzzle game?
Less polished than hybrid casual. Are we talking like 8-bit or something like that?
Excuse me, George. I've just got I'm totally malfunctioning here. One sec.
All right.
I guess
Appreciate
he's
that.
meaning like, well, I don't know, Chris. Maybe if you come back and let me know what you mean about less polished. But when you look at the biggest puzzle games that we saw at the start, they've all got that creamy, cartoony sort of almost Pixar sort of movie look to them.
Mhm.
Soft and unbusy is a word that I'm not sure I just made up, but it kind of hopefully explains that you need to make sure it doesn't distract from the puzzle, um,
Yeah.
unless of course you're doing a hidden object puzzle game, which is
Yeah.
classed. So and
Yeah.
and those can go as elaborate as you can think. So just bear
Yeah.
in mind, George. I will let you talk in one sec. Just bear
Yeah,
in
no
mind that
worries.
we that
Yeah. Yeah.
the we were just talking about that particular flavor of puzzle today.
I was gonna say that, for example, another popcorn game, Scavenger Hunt, it has much less polished looks. I'd say I wouldn't say unpolished, but it has 2D flat, almost sticker-like assets. So I guess you can use them. It just depends what kind of puzzles you're doing. That makes a lot of sense because you're moving in a big world with a lot of access assets. If you'd had like 3D hyper casual assets, I think the performance wouldn't be as good. Probably you'd have a lot of characters on screen. It will require a lot of processing power. Uh, you really have to adapt to the type of puzzles you're doing with the art and the
Yeah,
art
I
style.
think. Yeah, overall, like again, this is why I started off today saying this is such a vast topic. It's like it's there's so many strands and nuances to this topic. It's unbelievable because if you look like a game like Portal or something, that is a classic puzzle game, but that's more realistic graphics. So I think you need to match it up with the sort of the feel and the vibe that you want to go for, and make sure it um, matches that, Chris. I hope that was helpful. Cargard says, do we need to have a low CPI if they decide to go with one of those games? Maybe they need to have a low CPI if they decide to go with one of those games. So maybe this is a good art start. I guess you're answering SM up there. Sorry, I'm reading these kind of blind. YG Studio, what is up? What's the CPI for the puzzle game Open the Box? I don't have that information to hand, but if you remind me over on the Discord, and do come and join us on the Discord, I will let you know over there. Um, and the general range for the others in the presentation. Yeah, remind me over there and we'll try and share that information for you. We wanted, because this is the ideation show, we kind of didn't want to get too distracted on the CPI from that. This is more to do with the game design elements of the puzzles. That's why we didn't show them today. Carla said, I saw that publishers have a lower than 70 requirements for puzzle games. I think your CPI, you always want to get as low as possible.
Yeah,
Um, you know, it's a really difficult one. Like the lower the CPI, you're onto something. So, um, you always, and I hope I impress this on you every week, just make your games, test them, and try and get better each time around. It doesn't matter if they only accept this or they only accept that, because if your game doesn't meet that, then it's a moot point. And I hope you take that in the spirit that it's intended. It's just like, don't worry about that, just make the best game you can. YG Studio says, given that Popcorn has 100 employees, they still come up with one new hit a year, might mean that they are testing a lot of prototypes, but very less of them are clearing their own KPI filters. So yeah, big companies are always going to be testing. Um, yeah, that's I guess that's more of a statement.
I think their live games
Um,
are always on the top chart. Also, if you see, Parking Jam is constantly there, so their live team
yeah, that
has
that is like an app
many.
store staple now. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
George.
no worries. No, continue.
Um, in the end, all games ever created are based on main motivation and adding constraints, power ups, and depth to make it fun. Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Okay, this is a question for sure. Would you consider the recent game Twisted Tangle by Rollick following the same blueprint as Popcore's sequential games?
Yeah, they do. They are from the same family in a way. Like even Popcore now and Rolik are under the same parent company. And I guess and Twisted Tangle, yes, I would. It's still yes. I'd say the definitely answer is yes. It's sequential. It does use the same type of features that the other use, but it does play with the grid, which gives it a bit more complexity. The other ones usually are just you don't have a grid, you can really do free movement, but this one plays with the grid, but you do have to remove one part of the rope to make the other move. There's tangling instead of overlapping and front facing obstacles. So yeah, there's something there that really makes it sequential. But this one, I think, really taps more into the in the EAP monetizations. It does have more hybrid features, I'd say, and it's an evolution from their old game. I don't remember the name now. I think it was Tangle 3D or Tangle Master 3D, something like that. Tangle Master 3D, yeah.
Tangle Master, yeah.
If you look at that, that's a sequential puzzle also, but this is an evolution, and you do play with a lot more ropes, a lot of more grids where you can move them for a longer period of time. And I think it evolves the playtime also. It must be a game that has a bigger playtime, and it's not as much hyper casual as it is more a hybrid, I'd say. light hybrid because
Yeah,
it
so I think they took that core game and just added tons of depth to it and made it more complicated, essentially. So
yeah.
I would say it sits squarely in this, but as George rightly said, it goes. They add different pinch points and stuff into that to make it way deeper. And of course, when you do that, it expands the monetization loops as well. There's way more you can monetize with, like you know. If you're in a big level like that, I don't know if they do this, but they should have they should pop up. They should have a pop up saying remove five. Use a ticket to remove 5 ropes or something like that. So this is just really the main core engine or mechanic to we covered today on this sequential one. But I would say you're right on that for sure. I can't remember who did that. Warrior Within. I love Homa Academy. Well, thank you, Warrior. Appreciate that. Frantic asks, when making a puzzle game for test, would you include some in-app purchases, even a rewarded video, for example, or using in-game coins?
I think not in the first step of the ideation. I would do it after the test is successful, I'd say.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember with all of this, well, we don't want to see ads. And I understand it can be tricky if you're baking your monetization in and it's a core sort of core integration with your game. I would just put some buttons in there to give it to them for nothing or something like that. If you're building the systems around that, um, essentially, you just want to see the if people are playing it because it's fun. That's really how the test works. But if you've got monetization, either turn it off in terms of turn the pop ups up and just let them play the game for the fun of playing the actual core loop and game. I hope that makes sense, Frantic. Tap away. What are good ideas for videos for the puzzle genre? What are good ideas for videos for the genre? Not sure I understand that one. Do you get that one, George?
So I think it's trying to ask what kind of creative. So how would you display your puzzle?
Yeah, I think that all depends. They
Yeah,
follow all the typical CPI rules, so be sure to go and check out the CPI show that we've got. We
yeah.
cover a vast. We cover CPI all over the shop there. I should keep an eye out for more Homescape ads. Yeah, exactly. Well, people are doing that. SM people are making games out of the creatives that these bigger companies are doing. Did Homescapes copy Pull the Pin? Yes, they did. Because Pull the Pin was before, and that was the trendsetter there. Pricing model, hope they revert it. Yeah, we should have a statement coming out along with all our fellow publishers. And you can get the announcement over on our LinkedIn channel. It's probably already there now, I would say. Since Halloween is around the corner, have you tested any horror style games and mechanics? What's your take on Halloween? Or no, let's open it up a little bit. What's your take on seasonal themed games, George?
Games itself. I mean, I think seasons pass, and that's the problem with them.
Yeah, it's
they,
risky. It's risky
they
if you
should
go
be,
all in on that. Like once a year, you'll get a spike. My mate Simon has a Santa tracker,
yeah,
right?
they
So
should be more.
guess what month that gets popular in? It does really well, but it
They should be
doesn't
more of a
last that
creative
long.
feature than the in-game feature.
Yeah, you
But
I
just
would have that as a classic live event further down
yeah,
the
live
line,
event.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Speaking of, well, I've heard it pronounced Godot or Godot, but they saw their biggest spike in users of all time in the last few days. So they've had a good week.
Wonder why.
Um, what do you think of the commission policy? Yeah, at a hand, there's a conversation over on the Discord, or check out our LinkedIn group for that. Ray says low CPI videos. So Ray, I would highly recommend checking out the video of your first 5 seconds count or something from the playlist on here, or visit the high CPI section within the academy. We've got everything you want to know there. It follows all the same rules. Yeah. Okay. The hardest thing for making puzzles is to find the right level difficulty curve. Second thing has to be CPI. I think, George, what's your take on the difficulty curves for puzzles?
For me, the CPI has been the toughest thing, I'd say. It's really hard to find a really marketable theme that you can crack in a puzzle environment. I say the balance it's extremely difficult also, and the level design, for example, in sequential puzzle are more simple, but definitely the theme and the balancing longer term, yeah, it's those are the two main ones.
Yeah, I think for the balancing, it is a tricky one, and that's where you need data to lead you forwards on that. You know, get your analytics set up properly and record where your dropping off, where are your players dropping off in your levels. So does
Yeah,
everyone bad on level 5? Right, your analytics will show you that, and therefore you've probably got a problem that level 5 is too difficult. So I would let the data lead you a little bit on that. Again, every puzzle will be different, but yeah, get some analytics in there and get some users in there and see what the people are telling you. What do you think about the combination of puzzle game and realistic graphics? Can these
uh,
two things attract the same target audience? Says Johan. Good to see you, Johan.
yes, indeed. Look at Triple Match 3D, Match 3D. They're all pretty realistic. They have realistic textures, realistic physics, uh, good sort also, uh, goods sort. I want to say. So yeah, I could definitely have realistic graphics and attract the same type of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is what's really interesting about it. It's just like, why not? You know, why not? So yeah, it can work. I think it depends. Um, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to flick over because we're running out of time. Ray, is Homer looking for puzzle games? Yes, we are. We are looking
Yes.
for games. So yeah, we don't. If we will test. You know, everyone says, "Oh, you should go. Do you want puzzle or this or that?" You know what? Why don't you test the game? Because essentially, the market will tell us. And if you see a particular game doing well, it's because it's done well in testing, and then everyone goes to copy it, which you're already behind. So give us something, and we will test it. All right, I will get back to the questions. I want to flick back real quick just to give you some last points of mention here because we've gone well over, and I knew we would. So, sources of inspiration for your games. I thought this was a finish off today with just a few ideas for you if you're thinking about puzzles. And I know these ones are relatively obvious, so I will skip past them pretty fast, I should say. But Google, right? So if you want to come up with some ideas, history, success leaves clues, basically. So you can just literally do a search on Google called for top puzzle games. Type in year, type in the platform, and you can see. Well, I've cut it off here. I think this is 2011, the one I did, and I literally typed in top puzzle games 2011 iOS, and it gives you a bunch. Google does a really good job of giving you also a great list that you can expand, and you can click in each one and go to a wiki or get the download. And I essentially found this one on my first look. I think called Snoticles, believe it or not. But it's like Angry Birds, like physics space game. It's a very simple concept. It's one touch, and it is super juicy, and it's got an Birds vibe about it. It's a landscape game, but this could be, a different take on Angry Birds, which I think, could be worth exploring. I'm definitely not saying do not. Not. I'm definitely saying don't make this. Let me start that again. Oh my goodness. I'm not saying do make this one, but I'm saying this is the example you could maybe experiment with. I haven't seen one of these for a while, so there we go. Next up is Steam. Always a good favorite for me to get some ideas from. You can also go to Itch or the Epic Store or Unreal Store or even Congregate. I've got George trying to come back in here. 1 second. I just want to get George here. I'm going to just finish this real quick and then we'll get back onto George and wrap up. Sorry about that. So yeah, go onto the Steam store. They've got a really nice way of splitting out the categories on puzzle. So this will be a good way to get some ideas. I saw this one as well, Merge Beasts, as I was on the store on Steam. And this is like a tower defense, but it looks like a match 3. So I think you can get some really cool ideas from here. Again, I won't read the slides out. But you can get some really neat ideas from that. And last up is Apple Arcade, which is a super interesting one. There's literally 45 puzzle games on Apple Arcade right now, as the time we record this, and they've got some really interesting ones. Most people won't tend to look at Apple Arcade. Most people ignore the paid games as well. So there's a lot of old paid games that people can't get anymore, or people don't download, so the download numbers are less, or they just don't get the volume because of the barrier of the paywall. So look at the top paid charts from the past and of the present. Can you turn a paid game? Can you do a version of a paid puzzle game and turn it into a free to play? All right. So I am gonna flick back to myself and I'm going to bring George back on because I think the line dropped out. He might have gone now, so I don't know where that. Well, there we go. George is gone, but that's all right. So I hope you found that helpful today. Thank you for George for joining with us. Unfortunately, I think his line dropped out there. I'm going to just quickly have a look at the questions before we wrap up. We have gone way over. Banneker says not a seasonal theme, but actual horror like a slasher or escape. I think it's a really difficult market, the horror theme market. I mean, Five Nights at Freddy's absolutely crushed it. I think they're very YouTubeable. It's super niche. I don't know. That's my honest answer. I don't know. I think it's worth a go. I honestly don't know about horror. I don't know about that. That's my honest answer. I don't know, Banneker. I think honestly, I don't know. I'm just going to shut up because I don't know how I feel about horror. I think it's risky, but I mean, sure. I don't know. I honestly don't know how to answer that. Put it on the Discord. Let's get a conversation going over there. I'll see what the publishing team think. They will probably say no, but I don't know. Maybe. Addy, good to see you. Late to this, but I'm sure it was a great session. Well, you're right. You just need to rewind this or get it on the replay. And do leave us a comment underneath, by the way. And of course, hit the like button to vote if you want to keep seeing this sort of content, because that's how we gauge whether or not you guys are liking it. Is non-level based puzzle game better than a level based puzzle game? I don't know how a non-level based puzzle game would work. Have you got an example for that, Sahir? Good to see you. Looks like World of Goo. Yeah, it's got a World of Goo look about it, hasn't it? That well, I forgot what it was called. Snottercalls or whatever it was. I thought it was World of Goo for a start. I mean, has World of Goo, could that do with a bit of a reboot? You know, maybe. Which Discord channel is Homer's Unity stance on? The Discord channel. It won't be on there right now because I haven't posted it yet. But I would check LinkedIn. Check Homer's LinkedIn or Homer's blog. No doubt, it will be on there. Otherwise, on the news feed inside the Discord channel, I have linked to a mobile gamer.biz post where you will see the collective letter that was sent out with Homa, Azure, Voodoo, Say Games, Crazy Labs, and I forget the others, but all the big publishers have taken a stance on this, so we are fighting for this as much as you guys want us to. That is the official take, but there will be a post coming out shortly from us if it's not there already. And there we go. I think that's going to go and wrap it up for me for now for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you want to see more puzzle stuff, or as always, the best way to let us know what would help you out is to leave us a comment underneath this video. I will read them and I will always reply to all of them, or head over to the Discord and let me know. And if we get enough likes and all that kind of stuff, we'll carry on with these sort of the series sort of thing. We can do multiple ones and hone in on different aspects. Next week, I'm doing part 2 of the Arcade Idol of... I forgot what it is. Oh my goodness. I think it is trigger points for monetization next week, but I will put the link early next week on the Discord channel, so you can go and click the button there to get notified for part 2 of the Arcade Idol playbook. Don't forget to do the survey for us if you would be so kind. You will go onto the homagames.com site, you'll see a pop up there. Just take that 1 minute, you'll be doing me a huge favour. And there we go. So with all that said and done, that is going to go and wrap it up for me. Thank you for joining with me, everybody. Appreciate you guys as always. Come and join me over on the Discord throughout the week. And I will see you next week. All right, guys. See you later. Ta-da. Bye-bye.